Okay. Testing. 1, 2. Microphone check. Levels are decent. Well, hello, Jeremy. Hello. Hello. I think we're good to go now. This is the Black Ponderer YouTube channel, and I am Neil Trotter, the host of the YouTube channel. Welcome. Here's the part 2 of the discourse. Yeah, part 2. Let's see if we can finish, because the last stream we got sidetracked, which is fine, because we're just hanging out here in the live streams. So let's see if we can continue our discussion with this excerpt. So this is, we talk about philosophy here on YouTube, here on the Black Ponderer, and, for the most part, primarily I usually make videos about text, and that's what we're doing now. Usually with the live streams, I'll do more loosey-goosey. We just talk about themes, not so much about specific texts, but lately we've been using the live streams as a way to talk about text because I just haven't been coming out with a video because I've just been reading just stuff that I can't really, doesn't really warrant a video for. I'm reading a lot of activist stuff. I'm currently reading this book, The Anarchist's Cookbook by Keith McHenry. That is that's one of the founders of an activist group called Food Not Bombs, which I've talked to many times in the past. And it's more about activism, but you never know. Maybe there's enough philosophy there to make a nice video for it. I don't know. But it's more practical stuff, which is important too. So I've been just reading a lot of that kind of stuff that's not really too heavy in philosophy, more just about practice. And, that's fine. So I've been using these live streams to talk more about the texts that I've been reading. And it's more excerpts. I guess heteronormativity focused too much on doing things rather than being a person. Yeah, it could be. Well, I don't know. Maybe is being a person doing a thing? I think there's a lot of doing when it comes to being a person, which we will talk about. So whether it's heteronormativity or like queerness, you are doing stuff. What is being? Isn't being actually doing? It's interesting. I learned days ago that truth is subjective. Oh, that was just a few days ago, huh? That's cool. I think there is a such thing as objective truth, but a lot of it is subjective. That's true. It can be subjective. Yeah, not all truth is objective. That's true. So the text, so we're talking about queer theory, right? Doing some queer theory, and I'm going to be reading from, the text is mentioned above in the description. Let me see if I can remind people. Queer, a question of being or a question of doing by Nikki Sullivan. That's an excerpt. Do I have the whole book? No, I don't. We're going to be talking about all types of things. Do we still have incomplete language when describing lived experience outside heteronormativity? So is the LGBTQIA plus label still lacking? How so? Can such descriptive language ever be complete? Should it be complete? Rather than fixating on the poststructuralist, oh yeah, I remember that. I talked about that. That's a word. Notion that there is no universal truth. Oh, that's why you bring up the truth. Yeah. We talk about structuralism and post-structuralism and all this, and then oftentimes people bring those up. They got to bring up modernism and postmodernism and all that stuff. But we'll get into that. Should we instead focus on the idea that there are multiple existing truths with each holding their own validities? Ah, yeah, that's why you brought that up. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. All this and more when we do this. We talk about this. Okay, so let's dive into some text. See if we can get into this analysis. Well, I forgot where we left off. I should have looked. But I'll just, so I'm reading this text and I'm just going to read some stuff I highlighted and we'll just add some supplementary commentary to it. So here's a highlight. Necessity of a focus on the intersectionality of racial, sexual, gender, and class identities. Such a focus necessarily involves the problematization of the notion of a unitary lesbian and or gay identity and community. And just saying like, hey, people who identify as queer or lesbian or gay or, all those like identities outside of heterosexual, right? They're not a monolith, right? They're very different. It reminds me of, I think I mentioned this before. I know a woman who identifies as a good friend of mine. She identifies as a gay woman. She does not like the term lesbian. She's like, hey, I don't like that term. Don't call me a lesbian. But isn't a lesbian a gay woman? Isn't that what a lesbian is? No. She just doesn't like the term. So she says, I'm a gay woman. And then there's other, I have another friend who she's like, yeah, I'm a lesbian. So what's the difference between these two? And that's just an example. There's all types of other examples. There's like, trans people who say like, hey, I'm not queer. I'm transgender. And then there's other people that say, well, queerness is under an umbrella. It's an umbrella term that includes trans, but not everybody thinks that way who identifies as such. Same thing with like non-binary, gender non-conforming people. Some people will say like, well, yeah, I'm a non-binary person. I'm not trans, right? But other people will say, who are non-binary, they'll say like, yeah, I'm trans, non-binary. It's just like, so it's a very multi-dimensional, very multifaceted, it's not just a spectrum, it's spectra, right? Many pluralities of spectrums, right? So there's a politics of difference. I highlighted that word. And then I highlighted the terms lesbian, gay, man, and heterosexual are limiting as a category of sexual identifications. So that's when we talk about like, hey, is LGBTQIA plus. I probably missed some letters. We're still lacking, but we're learning. We're learning. We got to use that term, and we're gonna make it expand. And some people will be like, man, how many times are you gonna have to expand that? As many times as is necessary, and we might change it up. And then you say, should the LGBTQIA plus have limits of labels, or the labels can be unlimited? Well, there definitely shouldn't be limits, right? But then some people will be like, hey, I mean, how long are you just going to include the entire alphabet? Well, maybe. It's probably going to be to the point where, to be honest, where you won't have enough letters because there's so many different identities, right? Which are all real. And that's what we talk about. Truth being subjective is like, well, there's many different kinds of truths that people live, and they're not all encapsulated in the LGBTQIA plus descriptor, and nor should it be. Right? We ask the question, well, should they? Is that the goal we should be aiming for? Not necessarily. Maybe it's impossible to capture all the identities under one label, but we use labels to help us describe things and talk about stuff. But maybe that shouldn't even be a goal of us, of the queer identity, to be able to like name all the identities into one term. Let's see, I highlighted bisexuality is not a sexual identity at all, but is sort of anti-identity, a refusal, not of course conscious, to be limited to one object of desire and one way of loving. So somebody, just critical theorist, Jan Clausen says that bisexuality, like, it's not a sexual identity, but it's it's an anti-identity. It's basically, a refusal is saying like, I'm just not, I don't identify as, the norm, what's considered, what is it? And I wouldn't even say the word normal, I would say like contemporary, well, not even contemporary, right? I don't, the usual terms we use, like, they don't apply to who I am, right? So I'm just going to say bisexual. Now, it's interesting because the term bisexual, right? That's people are tending to in the queer community, however encompassing that is, people are starting to move away from that term because it's too. People will say like, oh, it's too caught up in the binary notion of male female and is not including other kinds of people that don't necessarily fit evenly with the male female identification. So we're starting to see like things like terms like pansexual, right, or things like that. But then there's still plenty of people out there that say, well, no, I'm bisexual. So clearly sexuality is a multidimensional aspect of human nature. I personally don't think we should put labels on it, but it's necessary to protect a group that have been marginalized and oppressed. Yeah. Labels. We just got to acknowledge the limitations of the limit of the labels. We just have to acknowledge like, okay, this is not all encompassing, but we still need words to talk about these things, right? We just have to acknowledge the limits of our language, right? But yeah, it's important. I think, that's the thing that people will say like, I don't believe in labels at all. It's like, okay, but then how are you gonna talk about like marginalization? Like, how are you gonna talk about it? Social equity? Like they'll say like, and so then people will get into this notion of, oh, you just don't refer to these things, and then everything will be okay. If you don't bring up social inequality, if you don't bring up like sexism, then things won't be sexist. But no, it doesn't work like that. It's kind of like the same thing where it's like, well, if you just don't talk about racism, then there won't be racism. It's like, no, that's not actually how it works. In fact, not talking about it is actually how you perpetuate racism. Bisexual is still a term that most people don't understand. Ooh, you think so? I think it's getting it's a little old. It's kind of an old term, which does not necessarily means that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not useful, and maybe people still identify. But I don't know. I think today people kind of have a pretty good understanding. Bisexual means what? Somebody who's sexually attracted to, a male presenting and a female presenting, or like a femme presenting and a masculine presenting person. Well, it doesn't matter their gender, right? What don't you? I don't know. I think most people kind of know that by now. I don't know, maybe not. And then we bring up the word poststructuralism. Now I'm reading. Involves a rethinking of concepts such as meaning, truth, subjectivity, freedom, power, and so on. Okay. So poststructuralism is most often associated with a rejection or at least a critique of humanist logic and aspirations. I see. So there's just a rejection of... Look, there's these things that we identify as meaning, as truth, as freedom. Like they are not how we actually see. The way we talk about these things aren't actually what they are. post-structuralism will say. Like, we got to go beyond our current established structures. Like, when we're talking, bringing up the term freedom, say truth, where it's like, well, there is one objective truth. It's like, well, post-structuralism be like, well, no, right? Truth is this relative thing that some people, certain people believe at certain times, and and then you get caught up like, why doesn't people respect facts anymore? Well, the reason why is because there's different kinds of truths, right? And the way that we've been talking about truths is very limited. It's not like the actual reality of how people interpret the world, right? So that's what that's getting at. Heterosexuality is a historically and culturally specific truth, effect, or systems of power and knowledge, right? Because the term heterosexual was actually created after the word homosexual was developed, right? That was this homosexual that as that word existed, and then after that, people who wanted to talk about these things, particularly people who were like homophobic, they're like, oh, we gotta create a word that kind of normalizes, quote unquote, or keeps the status quo. So heterosexual, right? And then now the term heterosexual is like, oh, that's default. But actually that term was a response to, descriptions of queerness. So it's not default, right? Right? But we kind of think it is. So that's why it's important to know the historical and cultural specific context of these words that we use and these labels, right? Let's continue. Let's see here. Okay, past that. So that was all right. All right. So post-structuralist theorists. Did I do anything in my notes? I put in my notes here. Perhaps identification includes the state of not identifying as a particular mode of being. Yeah, we talked about that. Like, I don't identify as this, and so you're not identifying. You're not creating an identity. You're just saying like, oh, I don't identify. So that in and of itself becomes an identification, which is not necessarily specific or an all-encompassing definition. It's just like, hey, this heterosexual thing, like, I don't identify as that. I'm something else. And so it's kind of it's a implied rejection, but that's it. Which is, maybe that's more the way we should be thinking about it. I think the Western system has done great things for centuries in bringing up the concept of freedom, but we are too global to all accept it. The Western system? What do you mean the Western system? What Westernization? You talk about like basically European colonialism, or like European imperialism, like that Westernization, like this kind of Eurocentric thing, like that. Like, what do you mean Western system? And I also think because we live in a globalized world, there is no concrete agreement of truth. Yeah. I wonder, even if we didn't live in a globalized system, right? A globalized world, meaning like, people were kind of like in their own tribes and didn't associate with anybody. I would argue even then there would be no concrete agreement of truth, right? But, there are some things that are objectively true, I guess, quote unquote, right? Like human beings need air to breathe, right? Like we need oxygen. That's a concrete truth. But there's a lot of things like gender, sexuality, where it gets a little iffy. And I think that was the case even before the whole globalization thing happened, but I guess maybe, you know, it was easier for power structures, social economic power structures, to control or enforce their version of the truth with smaller communities. But, you know, still, there were people outside of those truths who were in those small communities. Right? So I don't know. So post-structuralist theorists are, however, critical of grand narratives and the logic that they attempt to reproduce and or legitimate on the grounds that they lead to totalizing or universalizing discourses and practices that leave no room for difference or for complexities or for ambiguity. So, like, you know, grand generalizations, like I guess they say, the articles say, post-structuralists don't vibe with that, you know, making, you know, these gross generalizations about stuff. They're like, well, wait a minute, there's always exceptions. There's always like alternative realities that exist, even in like in any situation, in any case. There's always the outlier, right? And somebody might say like, well, the outlier is just an outlier. Like it isn't indicative of like the overall thing. But a post-structuralist theorist who would say like, well, no, the outliers are an indicator to something that we're missing. I'm talking about the Republican system of liberty, equality, and democracy that the West sprawled out from the Enlightenment age. Well, well, I mean, you know, liberty, equality, and democracy, right? But we know, like, yeah, like the theory of that, right? The theory of that, but you know, was that like, like liberty, equality, and democracy? Was that ever the goal, the real goal of Westernization, or the West sprawling out in the world? Was that really the ultimate objective of you know, Western sprawling, you know, aka like imperialism or like European colonialism, right? They were not, I mean, they just kind of used all those terms to the front, didn't they? Right? Like, oh, we're going to spread freedom throughout the world. Like, no, you just want to like steal land and like, you know, and exploit people, and, you know, use slaves to like build your shit, build your capital, right? I mean, that's really what was going on there. Did they really believe in liberty? You know, do we even believe in liberty now? You know, I mean, if you just think about like Europe and the West and how that, you know, they used slavery was like huge to their building the Western civilization, right? So I mean, there was no liberty there, right? There was no liberty, even within themselves, right? Because there was, you know, all this classism. Women didn't have any rights, and you know, today we got more freedoms. I would say, you know, it's true. Like, I'm not a slave. Women can vote, but we're still, you know, some people will even say like we're kind of going backwards, right? In terms of rights, liberty, and equality, and certainly democracy. Like, yeah, like democracy isn't really a thing in America, to be frank. You know, I guess a lot of people are throwing out the term oligarchy, which, yeah, that's kind of what's kind of exists nowadays, which is sad, but I don't know. So yeah, yeah, I guess we would try to, you know, seriously think about like, well, has Westernization really pushed liberty, equality, democracy? I would argue no, right? I mean, they've used these ideas as fronts, or like, you know, illusions, right? To like push their agenda. Despite the colonialization and slavery, the founding fathers paved the way for these ideas to be believed and respected. I don't know about that. I mean, are these ideas respected today? Right? Like, is freedom a thing that people respect today? Certainly not in America, right? I mean, I've literally like talked to people yesterday about like, what I was like, one of the major problems in society is the lack of social equality. And then, this person says like, no, the problem is not social inequality. And I was like, oh, really? You say like, the problem is that we don't put enough resources into technology. Technology should be more you should be putting more resources into technology. Right? You told me like social inequality is just a thing that's just going to happen anyway, regardless. You can't stop that. Like, what are you, huh? So we should put it in like technology. It's like, what do you mean? So you want to have like a Skynet type of situation? Because we know like technology can lead us to all types of fucked up shit. Now, like, of course, like technology is I mean, I'm using technology to talk to you, but let me just look at AI and shit. Like, technology isn't isn't the great savior of humanity, but that's where I would think like social equality is more important than that, but a lot of people don't care about it. They really don't. I mean, if you really think about it, like, do people respect democracy? I don't know about that. I mean, if you look at what the president of the United States is doing, and how many people are backing that person, literally like destroying democracy. There's so many people who are like, yeah, that's exactly what it was. That's nothing democratic about what he's doing. But I don't think liberty, equality, and democracy are respected today. To be frank, I wish they were. That would be nice. The East, the Middle East, and Africa have collective culture of millenniums, and somehow oppressive. Yeah, no, the East, yeah. Asian countries in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, yeah, they got a lot of oppressive shit going on there too. Absolutely, but let's not pretend that the West is this haven of freedom. Right? It's funny when people do that type of stuff. I mean, I'm not saying like, I consider myself lucky. I could like criticize the president, and I don't have to be thrown in prison like, if I was living in Russia or like China, right? I mean, I couldn't do that. I would have the freedom to do that, sure. But that's a low bar, isn't it? Some people like, you should be thankful. It's like, I don't know, I think we should be we should be expecting more. We should be expecting more. Maybe we should kind of aim a little higher than that. And the fact that we're not, I don't know, I think that's kind of crazy. The issue is that people are sheeps. They don't have the balls to fight for what they believe in, and people have surface thinking. Well, that is a thing. I mean, that's a thing. That's true. In terms of like people, yeah, but you can't discount the social, the systems that like create sheeps. I mean, it's not like our social systems are helping. Like the education system here in America is fucked up. It's like jack shit crazy. Like, it's hard for people to become educated in the United States. I'm just speaking for my own country. The people in power create sheeps. So I don't know. I think that's the bigger problem. That of course, I guess there is a point of like, well, we as the citizenry should take more responsibility and like kind of fight the power. That's true, but also we can't discount those people who have a lot of power, who are like constantly on our asses, right? To like keep us into the sheep mode, right? So I don't know. Anyway, I hope we're not digressing for the Discord. We might have to do a part 3, which is totally fine. That's the live streams are more. That's why I want like live streams are more like having a conversation. They're not like lecturing, like my regular videos where I just kind of talk at you. Live stream is talking, having more conversation. So that's good. And we can have multiple parts. There's no problem with that. And then, did I finish reading? Consequently, post-structuralist theorists tend to concentrate on the local and the specific, and eschew universal and ahistorical accounts of oppression, definitions of homosexuality, blueprints for freedom, and so on. Yeah, we talked about these kinds of theorists tend to like avoid generalizations like that. And they like to look at oppression, forms of oppression within contexts, right? Multiple, multi-dimensional, aspects of like what's going on. I put in my notes: is it the case that there is no universal truth? That's the question I put in the description. Or perhaps there exists multiple truths or multiple validities. Yeah. So that's what this article is saying, like, because of course, like in the West, in many other parts of the world too, there's this idea of like, well, what a crazy, the tired ass thing I used to hear a lot, but I guess people don't want to say it anymore because it's very politically incorrect. Although people are getting bolder, and they're saying they're reverting back to saying like, well, the point of human beings is to reproduce. That's what living beings do. They reproduce. So that's why, these identities outside, these ways of being outside heteronormativity are not natural, because you can't reproduce in those conditions. And then they use that as truth, this kind of biological quote unquote truth. And there's just so many plot holes or so many logical fallacies in that statement. I mean, least of which is they're completely just missing like all types of queerness that exists in nature. Right? They don't want to go there. Literally, like, there's all types of like homosexual, queer, transgender, like things that happen with other animals and other species that people just want to like, let's not talk about, let's not even go there, like, but as if like in ways of being doesn't exist outside, as if these ways of being don't happen in other species, which I do like all the time, right? And you can just look up like scientific articles to see that. So things like that, and that's what the post-structuralists talk about. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like this whole thing about nature. Like if you actually look at nature, like you see queerness like all over the place. But you kind of restricting your conception of the truth to this very narrow type of idea. It is giving you like a false idea of reality, right? You're not like actually seeing nature in its true sense. Right? So post-structuralism see definitions as tools of oppressing identities. They can be. Most people don't even understand biology to talk about biology. You're right. Right. I mean, yeah, isn't that the funny thing? They're like, well, biology is like, dude, you failed your biology class in in school, right? In high school. And then biology taught in school in United States, that type of biology class is like not very good. Not because teachers are bad. It's just because schools are not funded, right? They're not resourced, so we get this really half-ass biological, like education of biology in high school, right? And people come out like not really understanding like the structure of a cell or something, or like the role the mitochondria plays in like human physiology. We don't really like we don't come out knowing these things because school is not funded very well. For post-structuralist theorists, there is no true self that exists prior to its immersion in culture. Rather, the self is constructed in and through its relations with others and with systems of power / knowledge. Okay, so it's they're saying, the article is saying like, yeah, truth involves like looking at the culture and looking at like the social conditions and like understand like that's a huge part of truth. That isn't which culture, that's a subjective thing. So you can't dismiss that part of truth. I also think people create fantasies about nature rather than embracing the danger of it. Yeah, like I mean, Disney does that all the time, right? Like the Lion King. I like the original Lion King movie. I think it's a great movie, but it's definitely absolutely a fantasy, right? It's not. And yeah, I think we should just like let's reiterate that. Let's say like, okay, this is a nice fantasy story. It has no real basis in reality, you know? But some people will watch that kind of stuff and they'll be like, yeah, this is how the world works. Like, no, not at all. Post-structuralists are critical of the liberationists, okay, ideal of the liberation of the true self and of sexuality as a singular unified force that has been repressed. Moreover, as we shall come to see, post-structuralist theorists and queer theorists find identity politics inherently problematic. So what does that mean? I put in my notes. Intersectionality is a way to consider repression more accurately. So I think like, yeah, the concept of intersectionality, which is like, part of what came out from like black feminism, or, black women who were feminists came up with that concept. And that was more of a way for you to be like, hey, oppression doesn't operate in like singular identities, right? Like if you're black and you're gay or you're poor, like your oppression is experienced way differently than somebody who's just one of those. Right? It's like it's an intersectional thing, right? So we can't be fixated just on identities. We have to be fixated. We have to like consider how different identifiers interact with each other and within the society that we live in. So it's a lot more complex than that, right? Let's see. Oh, hello, Nadia. And in your post-structuralist sense, how can someone unconventional and untraditional not only survive and overcome, but liberate itself from societal norms? In my post-structuralist sense, you're asking? Because I don't think I have a post-structuralist sense. But I would just say, because I wouldn't identify myself as a post-structuralist, but I guess the article, what you said, how would a post-structuralist deal with this? I guess the article is saying like, well, post-structuralists understand that there's no one singular truth. So that's the first thing you have to understand. And post-structuralists will say like, well, there's you have to consider the culture when you talk about truth and the historical context of things when you talk about truth, right? And then those are ways to liberate itself from social norms. So you can do that. Consider the cultural and historical context of something and understand that truth is a multidimensional thing that involves like subjectivity and is not just objective. Right? Hello, Sam. How does your how does post-structuralism correlate with postmodernism? Well, one way they correlate is that people throw those terms out left, right, front, and center to sound cool. Like, oftentimes but I mean, I'm kind of half kidding because, like, those terms, structuralism, modernism, they get thrown out. I mean, that's the way they correlate. Like, people who talk about modernism and postmodernism, they often will also refer to, like, structuralism and post-structuralism. I actually tend to try to not get caught up in that kind of jargon, to be honest with you. But I like I'm saying, I'm using these terms because I'm reading the text, and I think it is important to, like, discuss, like, okay, post-structuralism means that these are terms that we're using to, like, identify what we're talking about, and that's important. The language is important in that way, but I don't know. I would, like, let's try. We got to use these terms, but let's try not to get so caught up in the term. Sometimes people will start using these terms trying to sound smart, and I like to avoid that. Like, so yeah. It's hard to keep track of all the post yada yada. Yeah, exactly. It's like kind of gets old fast, and then, like, people tend to, like, check out. They're like, oh shit, here we go. This is why I don't like philosophy. You missed out on something. Yep. I'll have to catch up later. Do you have the ability to give a brief summary? Yeah, we're just talking about queer theory. Oh, do you think that post? Yep, that's the summary. Do you think that post-structuralism gives liberation to humans, objectively speaking? That's the question. That summarizes it. Do you think post-structuralism gives liberation to humans? I guess I'm supposed to be answering that question. No, because it's just a term that's thrown out. I mean, we defined it by, like, not accepting singular truths. Like, not being so open to singular truths. That'll help liberate humans. I guess when you mean liberation, you mean, like, what do you even mean when you say liberate humans? Do you mean, like, fostering more social equity? Is that what you mean? Or what does that mean? Oh, cool. I took a few queer theory courses in university and undergrad. Cool. Taught by queer people, which is important. Yeah, wouldn't that be horrible? Because that's what I'm doing. I'm, like, talking about, but I'm not teaching it. So I mentioned before, because I'm a cishet male. But I find queer theory very fascinating. So I have, I mentioned before, like, I have several buddies who are, like, college professors, university professors who are also queer, and they teach queer theory classes. And I asked a few of them, like, hey, could I just sit in? Because, we're pals. Could I just come in and sit in? And they're like, sure. So a lot of these texts that I'm reading during the live streams is, like, these queer professors assigning these texts. So I'm learning a lot. So that's cool. Post-structuralist theorists argue that changing your life is not simply a matter of changing your mind. This is because we embody the discourses that exist in our culture. Our very being is constituted by them. They are a part of us, and thus we cannot simply throw them off. So this is how the body is in culture. All right. Okay, where are we at here? Yeah, so I'm getting a free education. It should be, but I guess a lot of people would not like that because they're like, dude, so you're actually doing homework and writing essays, and you're not getting a grade for it. Like, you're not getting credit. Right? So a lot of people don't like the idea of that. Like, oh, so you're basically taking a hard ass college class and you're not getting credit for it. Like, what the fuck? Some people would like think that's not a good deal. But yeah, like you said, it's like, it's a free education from a university. Awesome. But, I'm not like enrolled in the class. I'm not getting graded or anything like that. But for more, it's like, it's, it's more like just learning, Am I writing? Yep, I sure have. Every assignment that the professor is assigning, I'm doing it, which includes writing essays. I have a midterm. Their midterm is like due Monday, so I'm gonna do it. It's like a 1,000 word essay. Now, I'm gonna do it, but I had no pressure because it's like, I can turn it in late. I'm not turning it in, so it really doesn't matter. But I'm still doing. I think I'll probably post it in my blog that I haven't posted for like over 10 years or something. How does multiculturalism come into play with post-structuralism? Well, I guess you could say post-structuralism considers culture as a way to determine truth, and so that's in that way there's multiple truths because there's multiple cultures. I would say. But how do you hand stuff? But do you still hand it in? Yeah, I mean my professor and I have a shared Google Drive. I know you don't like Google, but we have a shared Google Drive, and I just put it in because in the universities today they do everything online. I think they have an online system where they turn in all their assignments. But of course I don't have no access to that because I'm not enrolled in the school. But the professors, since they're my buddy, they're like, oh, I'll just create a little shared drive. You just put it in there. I'll look it over. And I'm like, cool, thanks. I love to read them. Yeah, I need to post that in my old ass blog. Do you write often? Yeah, I do. I do journal every day. I do. I've started doing that for a while now. I think multiculturalism makes people see truth relative to how cultures function, depending on historical and geographical context. Multiculturalism makes people see truth. I don't know about that. Functions because we have a lot of cultures in America. In the United States, I would say. I don't know about Canada and Mexico and all the other Americas. The United States, we have a lot of cultures, and people still will just ignore them. They pretend like they don't exist. They just completely deny these cultures, even though they're right in front of their face. So I don't know. See, that's what I'm talking about. This idea of westernization pushing liberty or freedom is I don't know. As an American, as somebody who lives in the United States, I see it all the time. Dude, you literally were at Chinatown, and now you're pushing all this, Asian hate. It's which happened during the COVID-19 thing. That our current president in his first term pushed, and people were denying. So it's crazy. I've been journaling, but it never sticks. Do you have any advice? Yeah, I would. Do I have this book? I think I shared it before. It's a little cheesy. It's a little cheesy ass book, but it's pretty cool. I'm sure you heard of this book. It's very mainstream. It's called The Artist's Way. It's a self-help book for artists who are who got writer's block or whatever. But it's for any artist, right? So I'm part of a book club that we were doing this. We're doing this, and they do this thing. Artist's Way talks about morning pages. You might have heard of this because it's extremely popular. But it's I used to always hear about it, but I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot because we were reading it. And you just do like, you write 3 pages every morning about just stream of consciousness. And that really like helped me journal. I used to not do that. I used to not be a journal writer. But then I did the morning pages, and now I do it every day. It's pretty cool. So I don't know. I would recommend maybe check out that book if you haven't. That might be the key to like unlocking your writing. Let's see here. Would you say that post-structuralists are always apolitical? I don't know. I don't know any. I'm not well versed in the world of post-structuralism. I'm just reading this text. I know like the famous post-structuralist or structuralist Foucault. Michael Foucault, right? The guy that was like against prisons, and he wrote that big ass volume, The History of Sexuality. I think he's post-structuralist, or was he a structuralist? I don't know. I haven't read him, but I know he's like extremely popular philosopher. That's the only real structuralist person I am familiar with. So I don't know if they're political or not. You have so many hobbies. How do you fit it all in? I mentioned before, I just don't watch TV. I always say that, like, just stop watching television. Stop watching Netflix, quit the Hulu, avoid the Disney Plus. You'll be amazed how much time just frees up when you don't watch it. Now, you can do whatever you want. You might. I'm not really into modern media anymore. I just think it's kind of sucks. Let's see. This book you just showed doesn't seem cheesy. Cool, yeah, you should try it. A lot of people, if you look at the reviews, most people will give it a positive review, but some people will say like, oh, it's a little cheesy because it's kind of like, it talks about spirituality, and you can easily kind of interpret. It's kind of woo-woo. It's kind of like new agey a little bit, but I think it's fine. Like if you're not open to spirituality, it might turn you off because it really gets into like spirituality and stuff, which I think a lot of people kind of find like it's a little like cheesy. It kind of gets a little like, I think people. It's like a Hallmark Channel type of. You can kind of get there, but I don't know. I think it's cool. But most people, I mean, it's well received. It has like almost universal critical acclaim, so I'll try it. When did you start journaling? Right when I started the book. Right when I started the bad boy, I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. Which was like, I'm on week 8 now. It's a 12-week program. It's like, yeah, it's a 12-week program. So it's a self-help book, and I'm on week 8. So 8 weeks ago, that's when I started. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I'm reading books like this I might make a video about this book. We'll see. Yeah, I'm reading these kind of books, which might not necessarily be videos. That's why I'm doing a lot of live streaming instead. Okay. Let's see. When did you start? Check out. I hardly watch TV, but maybe I am on social media too much, like Reddit. I am not on Reddit. That's like one of the social medias I'm never on. Probably good to be. But it's funny because Reddit, the way it looks, it reminds me of like old school internet before social media. It just like, it's basically like a message board, isn't it? It looks like a old school message board, but I don't know. I've never been on it, so which is kind of surprising to me, like because it looks very old school. Let's see, but also very busy with school. I thought you were finished with school, but I guess you're doing graduate school now. I know Michael Foucault, yeah, or probably, I know that's French, so I probably mispronounced the name. Consider that I speak French. Oh, yep. Yeah, he was a post-structuralist. Yeah, right. He's probably the most Yeah, yeah. Mikael, I can't even. Yeah. It's sad because I mentioned this before too. uh, I took in high school. I took French. I took 2 years of French in high school. I don't remember a single. Only thing I remember from that class is how to say "I am," which is just sweet, which I probably mispronouncing that because I didn't care. I was just like, you would just fill in worksheets all day. That's what you would do, and you would just turn in the worksheets. I think I got like A's in that class. Yeah, I just that's sad. You study a language for 2 years, you don't learn shit. But if you're not serious about the language, you can just yeah. That's funny. Yeah, I mispronounced. Oops. Yeah, I'm in my last month of graduate and might do a PhD. Cool. It's fully funded, which is nice. Oh yeah, that's great. That's great for you. So you take advantage of that. I actually know I have a friend who is about to finish her PhD, and her research was just like the funding for her research was just taken away by the Trump administration. So she's just coming to terms with the fact that I'm just gonna be like living in poverty for the rest of my life. She's already like coming to um, just trying to accept that fact, which is sad. But that's a lot of what's going on in America right now. It's just people are just like, I'm just gonna live paycheck to paycheck, and I'm never gonna like be somebody that can be good with money. The education is being and like research. Uh, the funding for that is like being obliterated here in this country. It's sad. But congratulations, Nadia. No, thanks. I'm not sure if I have what it takes. And I learn languages by myself. Cool. In America, we're very naive. A lot of us assume like all Canadians know French. Isn't like French the official Canadian language? And plus, your president, he has a French name, so that doesn't help with the stereotype. uh, I forgot his name, but it's French, right? But it's not true that all Canadians know French, right? I learned that. I was like, I just assumed. All right. The body is my being in the world, and as such, is the instrument through which identity is performatively generated. It is in virtue of having being a body that is discursively produced in and through its relation to culture that I am an I. Mm-hmm. That's what Judith Butler argues. The text cites Judith Butler. And so they're talking about how like body is in culture. Part of what influences the body is the culture that the body is lived in. And then I read this other quote: power is productive rather than simply oppressive and should be understood as a network of relations rather than something one group owns and wields in order to control another. So again, this multifaceted, multi-dimensional understanding of things rather than just this one just one wielding of control, this singular thing. French and English are two official languages. That's cool that y'all have two official languages. So you're like bilingual by default. Now a lot of Americans are bilingual. Those who have like immigrated. Most of my best good buddies are. I grew up with people who, lots of Latinx people, a lot of Asian Americans, and they didn't know English when I first met as a little boy, but then they had the ESL classes, the English, those English language special classes that they would take, and they would just learn so fast English. It was crazy. Because it's just like you got to know English in this country to like get anywhere, right? Or you have to rely on somebody who knows English. So it's kind of more of a survival thing. It's a shame because we got a lot of people who are bilingual, but that's just not a thing that people push. Like it's actually here in the United States, it's like considered bad to be like have multiple language. Like English is king, right? And if you start speaking another language, people are like, well, where the hell are you from? Why are you talking like that? Like, this is America. You don't talk like that in America. I mean, that's the kind of attitude we have. Like, we don't, in the United States doesn't really promote multiple language learning, which is sad. But so again, with the whole like, does the West promote freedom, liberty? No. Cool. There is no single locus of great refusal or pure law of the revolutionary. Instead, there is a plurality of resistances, which by definition can only exist in a strategic field of power relations. So here, we're talking about resistance against heteronormativity. And that's why you got all these various identifiers of heteronormativity, LGBTQ plus IA, lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, transgender, intersex, asexual, these plurality of resistances, right? And it just keeps going, right? There can be no universally applicable political goals or strategies, only a plurality of heterogeneous and localized practices, the effects of which will never be entirely predictable in advance. Queer theorists are a diverse lot exhibiting important disagreements and divergences. And then what? Most North American are unsophisticated and classless. They don't have no class in the sense like, they're not, proper. They have no class. Yeah. As opposed to like, because or you could use the other way of using that term, which is like, oh no, there definitely is class. Like you're a poor person and I'm a rich person, and fuck you. Like that's a huge thing here in the United States. Like class, but you're talking about the other class. It's classless to focus only on your your social class. Right? Queer is an ongoing and necessarily unfixed site of engagement and contestation. Queer itself can have neither a fundamental logic nor a consistent set of characteristics. Queer is by definition whatever is at odds with the normal, legitimate, the dominant. There is nothing in particular to which it necessarily refers. It is an identity without an essence. Queer then demarcates not a positivity but a positionality vis-a-vis the normative. Queer describes a horizon of possibility whose precise extent and heterogeneous scope cannot, in principle, be delimited in advance. And then I'll put in my notes here. But is it not important to specify the dominant that it is at odds with, i.e. heteronormativity? For example, I call myself the Black Ponderer, which is like at odds with the normal, which is white. So does that make me queer? Because I'm against that was what my notation is. It's like I think it's I would say like it's more specific. However, we are learning in this class I'm taking, or I'm sitting in on, that we do need to have more expansive understandings of queerness, and maybe there are that's something that should be considered. So that's interesting. So queer defines a strategy and attitude. Queer articulates a radical questioning of social and cultural norms. Queer theory does not simply develop new labels for old boxes, but rather carries with it the promise of new meanings, new ways of thinking and acting politically. And then queer theory is constructed as a sort of vague and undefinable set of practices and political positions that has the potential to challenge normative knowledges and identities. So now we're specifically talking about queer theory, right? Since queer is a positionality rather than an identity in a humanist sense, it is not restricted to gays and lesbians, but can be taken up by anyone who feels marginalized as a result of their sexual practices. Okay, so I was gonna say, like, so it's not just gays and straight, but it does say, like, oh, but it is about sexual practices. But is it? You know, I would say kind of yes. Like, even people, like, let's say people who identify as asexual, where it's like, well, there's a lack of sexual practices, and they're considered like, well, that's not normal. You should be more sexual. But the asexual positionality, we'll use that word, says no, I'm just as valid as you are. Just I'm just not as a sexual being as much as you are, and that's fine. You know, and then you could go further about, like, well, why is this obsession with sex? Because, you know, it's used as an instrument of social control. You know, sex is mostly in our society is like, it's about reproduction, and it's less about pleasure, or it's more about like commodity, and sex is like a form of capital nowadays, and sex sells, and if it's not used in that way, then it's deviant, or it doesn't, like, it's rejected. If you can't use it to create more capital, you know, even like when we talk about reproduction, right, in terms of you know, because you're reproducing more laborers to work for a corporation. It's sad to say. Marx talks about this, by the way. He talks about how, like, you know, the you know, women have this, what they call it, free labor. I forgot the term he uses, but, like, yeah, this labor that isn't, like, you know, compensated for, which corporations use, the childbearing and, like, raising children, like, you know, our society forces that on the women because that's a form of generating capital too, and that's like a way that sex is used, right, or legitimized. It's like, well, you know, you're using it to create little laborers so they can grow up and work for corporate, and so sex in that way is good. But, like, you know, alternative way, you know, sex that doesn't meet those objectives is like, oh no, that's we don't want to see that. Right. Let's see. Do you agree that queerness has no logic or essence? Well, I do agree with what they're saying. Like, it doesn't have a singular logic or a singular essence, right? It's a multi. There's many different kinds of logics that you could apply to queerness, like, and that's what queerness is like this acceptance that there's multiple kinds of logic that applies to senses of being, as well as, like, essences, right? So it's not that, it isn't like there is no essence or no logic. There is, like, a multitude of logics and essences. How many people are in your class? Oh, what is it? It's not too many. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's 6 people in the class, which there are 6 people who have who are officially enrolled students, and I'm in there, like, just chilling as an observer. Yeah, so it's like 6 students, I think. Do you know if I don't want to study for that long? Books are more than enough for my. That's cool. Let me see. I like that more too. I'm not a fan of grades or stress. I'll just read it because that's interesting. But I'm considered PhD since it's funded. Might as well get paid to research as I don't really have a career. But how much do you get paid? Do you get paid a lot? I guess you don't have to answer that question because I was just saying in the United States, you do get paid, but it's like below like a living wage, like which is kind of absurd. But yeah, that's it. PhD students get paid, but it's like not enough to survive, right? Right. And then they even have to sign contracts that say like I will not get like a job outside of my PhD or something like, which is like, okay, so you want me to live in poverty? All right. So I mean that's another deterrent why people don't want to get PhD. It's like, dude, I don't want to live in poverty for like 2 or 3 or 4 more years of my life. but maybe like in Canada, they're like, no, they give you you can live off this wage. So I don't know. When the views that ever is dominant gets produced. How did I meet my professor? Oh, I'm in the movie. Check it out. I'm in the movie, and there was a screening of the movie. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find the link. And there was a screening of the movie, and the professor was there. And then there was an after party, and I talked with the professor at the after party. In fact, let me see if I can find it right quick. Maybe. Search. Where do you go here? Is it too damn long? The link is too long. That's funny. Let's see. Okay, but I think this will be enough, maybe. Let's try that. Maybe that works. I'm not sure if that'll, because I know there's like it's on behind a paywall, but I had a link that went over the paywall, but I don't know if that blocks the paywall. You don't have to watch it. Just it's like a little short documentary film that I'm a part of. Check it out, but you don't have to. Anyway. Let's see. University of Toronto, I'm guessing. We also have a UFT here where I'm from. It's called University of Tennessee. Okay, base plus teaching. And some people are working part-time at places. They're professors, but hopefully I can figure something out. Okay. There's a paywall. Yeah, so I have a link that bypasses the paywall, but it's too long. Like the YouTube doesn't let me, since it's so long, the YouTube doesn't let me post it. But I can post it to your, I can give it to your Discord via Discord. Yeah, because I have a link there, but it's like, I saw it was like super long. But whatever, it does, But anyway, that's how I met the professor. I was looking at like 40K, and I was trying to consider, is 40K enough to survive on in the United States of America? And to be honest, I'm not sure that it is, which is very sad to say, but it's true. I think that's like barely enough. You'd have to that's the type of salary you would need to be like eating like ramen noodle, like instant noodles like every day, which is 40K is like, that's not like nothing. But yeah, I don't think you could. You'd have to budget a lot to deal with. Yeah. Right now, I'm working in different jobs. Okay. Let's go back to the article here. One of the problems with this particular use of queer as an umbrella term is that it does little, if anything, to deconstruct the humanist understanding of the subject. Worse still, it veils over the differences between, for example, lesbianism and gayness, between women, between transsexualism and cross-dressing, and ignores differences of class, race, age, and so on. Once again, positing sexuality as unifying factor. Mm-hmm. As you can see, this article is quite old because it uses the term transsexualism. I don't think we use that word anymore. It's just more like transgender. And sometimes we just, in modern times we use trans, right? Or transness, right? But yeah, it's a little dated. But that's fine. The point is that, we're just talking about, sexuality is not this unified thing. It's, when you're saying like, oh, I'm queer, like, what does that mean? It's like many terms, right? I always say that about people they say like, I am a Marxist. Like when people say I'm a Marxist, it's like, okay, what do you mean? Right? You're a Marxist. Or like even people who are like, I'm a socialist. Like, well, you gotta be more specific because there's so many different kinds of socialists. There's like Marxist-Leninists, there's like communists, and then there's all different kinds. There's like the hippie-dippy communists of socialists. There's like social democratics or like democratic socialists. Right? And I guess you could say the same thing about queerness, right? I'm queer, like, okay, that doesn't, so you're not heterosexual. You don't fall in, but there's so much outside of that still doesn't really give me much, but I guess it does give you a lot. That says like, well, you're not into the whole, you're not conforming to the heteronormative, that's pretty big. But I would need to get to know you as a person. You need more than that, right? 40K is base. Yeah. But I am not ambitious and productive. Yeah, 100K. Whoo. That's nice. That's nice. I mean, you're hustling. If you're if you're not one of those people that inherited, or like, you're not like an executive or something from corporate data. If you're making 100K, you hustling. But that's nice. Teacher's assistant and RA, I don't know. Residentialist, I don't know. Residential assistant, I don't know what these terms are. On top of that, plus grants for your research. I'm so looking forward to reading your poetry book. Cool. What did I put in the notes here? Making a people a monolith is often problematic. Yep. The use of queer as an umbrella term can, as Halperin has noted, okay, let me not include that. The use of queer as an umbrella term can have the effect of misrepresenting us as one big happy queer family. So there's also this term called queercore. But the freedom to personalize anything you see or hear, then shoot it back into the stupid world, more distorted and amazing than it was before. So, that's kind of like, that's interesting. And that's kind of a way queerness. That's kind of like when you go to, like, I often go to this queer burlesque show. I think it's called Queer Circus Group. I think it's QCG. Yeah. It's this. I like this show that these this artist group perform. They do it at this. I don't know if you would call it a gay bar, but it's very queer friendly bar. Every month they do like a queer burlesque show, and it's like kind of a circus too, because they do like all types of flips and like. Gymnastics and shit, but they do it with like no clothes on, which is awesome. But a lot of it is like satire and parody too, and it's like kind of like taking normal stuff and kind of like rearranging it and like putting it on his head and forcing you to think differently. So it's like, it's awesome. It's like, it's like a strip show before like an intellectual. It's like smart, it's like an intellectual strip show. It's pretty cool. But the way because they'll like dress up like religious figure, like nuns and nuns and pastors and preachers, and do all types of like subversive things that are, I would say entertaining, but forces you to think and criticizes religion at the same time, and just all types of, they'll like do parodies of movies that are like mainstream, but then they'll like like kind of poke holes at why they're problematic and things like that in this really fun, kind of joyful way. So I would say like that's part of like that's kind of a queer core thing. Cool. They don't pretend for a moment that they can alter the dominant culture, gay or straight. They don't want to. They're trying to create an alternative culture in and around it. And a resisting language that normalizes as normalizing creates hierarchies of power. Oh, I see. So yeah, trying to create new language that breaks like this old language. So it's not just waiting for people to accept, these differences of being. It's like they're just being, which is different, and they're like, and in that way they're changing language and culture, right? But really they're just expressing truth, right? Because they're this is truth outside the narrow, the narrow ideas of truth, right? That aren't like inclusive to like the multiplicity of truth. Right. Okay, so where was I here? 45, 46. Is this? Okay. Problematizes some of the key tenets found in much of the writing that calls itself queer theory. The first of these is the belief that naming something constitutes a form of closure or of assimilation. That, for example, what is transgressive about queer is its ephemerality and any attempt to explain what must forever escape meaning. So queerness is a kind of transgression, right? And it tries to escape meaning, right? Is that interesting? The refusal to define queer, or at least the ways in which the term is functioning in specific contexts, promotes a sense of inclusivity which is misleading and, worse still, enables exclusory praxis to go unchecked. So because there is a defining happening, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, right? So when we start trying to define queer theory, we start saying what queer is not. This is what queer is, and therefore queer is not this. But they argue like, well, that's counter to what queer theory is. Or queer theory is this understanding of there's being that's outside of definition, and by applying definition, you are countering the whole idea of what queer theory is, right? So now we're getting to the point where it's like, well, what does it mean to be queer? It means to be without definition, which is fascinating. And so when you start saying like, well, what do you mean? Are you lesbian? Are you gay? Are you straight? Are you trans? It's like, no, we're not going there. Like, I am who I am. Right? I am who I am. Don't I escape that? I guess that's kind of the whole escaping labels thing. But at the same time, we are starting to get to the point where people are like, there are people who are expressing their being and they don't fit in any of these terms. That's why you got like 3 different ways of saying people who don't fit into the spectrum so far. I know people who are like, I'm non-binary, and then there's other people I know that are like, well, I'm actually gender non-conforming. Then there's this other person I know who's like, well, I'm actually gender queer. That's what I am. And these different things some people say, well, it's the same thing, and others will be like, oh no, it's different. It's like some people say like, well, there's a spectrum, and there's masculine on here on this side, and there's feminine on that side, and I exist somewhere in between. And then other people will be like, well, I don't exist anywhere in that spectrum. I'm outside of it, right? Which is fast. So I'm not there. And then other people will be like, well, I don't. That what you're describing has no meaning to what I am. Like, that's irrelevant to me. Right? So the spectrum doesn't matter to me at all, or like where I'm positioned in this whole diagram that you're saying. So yeah, it's like, and so how helpful are definitions? Right? Burlesque is a beautiful art of satire. Yeah, it's something else. It's something else, man. Let's see where we're at. It does seem, let's see here. Okay. We're going to finish this. It does seem valid enough to suggest that at times queer theory and politics are informed by and inform an overly simplistic distinction between what or who is deemed to be queer and what or who is not. This dichotomous logic homogenized, sorry, my bad, homogenized, I know that word, homogenized political identities. A broadened understanding of queerness based on intersectional analysis that recognizes how numerous systems of oppression interact to regulate the lives of most people. Heterosexuals have multiple subject positions, and thus not all heterosexuals are situated socially, politically, economically in the same way. Right? Even the heterosexual label has multiplicity in it. Right? To those whose sexuality may be deemed queer, but who at the same time see themselves as members of other communities, that is, communities formed around race, class, disability, and so on. Or cishet allows, what did I say? I see. Or this is my notes. I put like, or cishet allies that are part of queer chosen families, like me. Like, I'm a queer ally, and my wife and daughter are queer. And so I'm part of that. So I guess I'm, people often say like, because of that, I'm part of the queer umbrella in a certain kind of way. Right? Let's see. It may be more productive to think of queer as a verb, a set of actions, rather than as a noun, an identity, or even a nameable positionality formed in and through the practice of particular actions. And that goes back to the very first comment that was said, if I can scroll up. Or maybe not the first one. I guess Jeremy said, I guess heteronormativity focused too much on doing things rather than being a person. But, the article is saying like, well, queerness is a way of being. Queerness is queer is a verb. It's a set of actions. And, you can go generalize that even further and say being is an action. You guys like my my old ass ripped up sweatshirt. I had it for like, I don't know, 15 years now. I say it's like emo. It's kind of like it's the sweatshirt I sleep in sometimes, because that's how lazy I was today. But yeah, being is a set of actions. Western metaphysics, a historically and culturally specific system of meaning making, by undermining the notion of polarized essences. So yeah, Westernization, Western civilization, right? It's a kind of metaphysics, right? Because it's not real. There's a lot of fiction. Part of that is the American dream, which is kind of metaphysical, like this idea like, husband, wife, father, mother, 2.5 kids, dog, cat, picket fence house, you know, like, and then, you know, some people are there, they have that, but their lives are still fucked up, right? As you can see in all those true crime stories and shit that come out. But, yeah, and part of that is like patriarchy and the heteronormativity. And it's this kind of metaphysics that westernization kind of pushes that is a reality, but pushes a lot of falsehoods, right? It denies a lot of like real existences. And I said we go back to like, is westernization pushing forward freedom, liberty, and you know, all that other stuff? Not necessarily. A deconstructive analysis would highlight the inherent instability of the terms, as well as enabling an analysis of the culturally and historically specific ways in which the terms and the relation between them have developed and the effects they have produced. Okay. Yeah. Queer theory is less a matter of explaining the repression or expression of a homosexual minority than an analysis of the hetero-homosexual figure as a power / knowledge regime that shapes the ordering of desires, behaviors, social institutions, and social relations in the world, the constitution of the self and society. So queer theory is a deconstruction of heteronormativity. That's what it is. Yeah, that's really, yeah, as a form of analyzing social economics, right? That's what's going on here. That's my notes. Right? Queer theory is a deconstruction of heteronormativity. That's how I would say we should be looking at this. Okay, so that goes here, I guess. Not only structures Western metaphysics, but also plays an integral part in the politics of sexuality, most particularly in the denigration of homosexuality on the grounds that it unlike heterosexuality, is a sterile or non-reproductive and unnatural relationship. We got private property, racial purity, phallocentric systems of power, knowledge, the phallus, the penis object is like, you know, the way we obsess over that in terms of like it denoting a kind of power, right? You know, patriarchy, essentially. Queer theory kind of critiques that whole notion. And then we go to Shorter Oxford English Dictionary. How do they define queer? Queer is also defined in this text as not in the normal condition, out of sorts, drunk, and of course as a slang term for homosexual. If we turn to queer as a verb, to queer, we find it to quiz, ridicule, or ridicule to spoil, put out of order. Even the, if you look it up in the dictionary, like the old school dictionary, the term queer is, as a verb, is to quiz or ridicule, to spoil, put out of order. And in a way, like, that's kind of what the queer being is doing to heteronormativity. It's quizzing it, it's ridiculing it, it's spoiling it, it's putting it out of order. Much like those queer burlesque shows I'm talking about. The old school dictionary definition, that's what I wrote in my notes. The process of naming inevitably involves reconstructing oneself in and through humanist identity categories, often imposed by others, and moreover bracketing off or veiling over all the aspects of oneself that do not seem to fit neatly with such a designation. Right. Moral of the story, people must love who they are and not let society define them. Right. And, you know, I would go further with that moral and say, you know, you gotta like expand that, right? You gotta like, it's not just about yourself. Like, you gotta love yourself. People must love who they are, right? but you also have to like you look at the like everybody. I think that's one of the huge issues with society now. Is like we're so inwardly thinking, and we're just like it's all about like how am I going to make myself better? And it's like, well, what about society? Like, so what does it say? It says like, look, there's a multiplicity of being, and that's the beautiful. It's amazing, and like that's what it means to be human. Right? So if you love yourself, maybe you're like, maybe you are like a heterosexual person, cisgendered heterosexual person, and that's who you identify as, and that's cool. But you gotta like acknowledge that, well, the other person over there is not that, right? And you shouldn't have a problem. But in fact, you should. That's where we have to love. The love comes from like accepting variance and multiplicity and like diversity, right? We gotta love diversity, love and I would argue like get rid of that whole notion of tolerance. Like we gotta be more tolerant as a society. No, we gotta love people who are different from us, right? Because difference helps everybody, right? But that's what I would say. I think that's more the moral. Let's see. I think a big part of happiness is being understood. Okay. I think this article would push back against that and say like the human being, a person is impossible to understand a person because we are beyond definition. Right? So I think the moral or the point of the article is saying like we need to be content with our inability to understand ourselves, right? And understand others. And it's okay to not understand somebody, and we should be. That's actually a good thing, right? It should be. Yeah, and I think like it'll argue like that's the problem with heteronormativity, is that it's like forcing. First of all, it forces a definition onto you which you don't vibe with, but it also like tries to force you to define yourself, right? Or like it's forcing you to understand yourself, where it's like, well, maybe you're beyond understanding or comprehension, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? In fact, that's good because it offers this, you're like a blank canvas ready to be whoever the hell you want to be, and you're not like tied down to one specific thing. Love takes different efforts and people are lazy at it. Yeah, love is a verb. I have I wonder if let me see if I can I don't know if I can get it. No, I can't. I have a quote on my wall. It's by Bell Hooks, black feminist Bell Hooks. Her famous quote is, "Love is a verb. Love is a verb. It's not a noun. Love is not a noun. It's a verb. It's an action, right?" Yeah. So it does take work, doesn't it? Yeah, I have the quote on my wall. Let's see. How can we apply not understanding someone for the greater good? Well, this article goes into great detail about that. In one way, as I just said, like, if you allow somebody to not be defined and understood, like, that allows that person to explore their being. And so they're not like locked down into like this specific definition or this specific way of understanding who they are. They're like, well, I'm this and I'm that and I'm this and I'm that and I'm that and I don't know who I am. I'm just gonna keep going. Much like what Nadia was saying, like PhD. You're getting PhD because you don't know what you're gonna do yet, which is no problem. Now, in our society, is like you need to know what you want to do by the age of 10 years old. You need to know what you need to do for the rest of your life, right? And we live in this kind of society, right? But it's okay to not only not know what you want to do, but to maybe you never know what you want to do in life. And as long as you're just keep, being constructive and like, spreading love and kindness and compassion, and that's good. Massive Attack, Teardrop, love is a verb, love is a doing. I love Massive Attack. That's like one of my favorite bands, the Teardrop, which was also the theme song to House. Wasn't it? I think it. I remember I never really liked that show, House, but I remember I would watch it. I would make sure I tune in because the theme song was a Massive Attack song. So I like listened to the theme song and I watched like the first 10 minutes and like probably turn it off. But I love that song, Teardrop. That song is like actually one of my favorite songs of all time. That was a good one. Where did I leave off here? An infinite extracting from the depths of oneself. It is supposed that one comes to know the truth of oneself. The subject who knows him or herself is at the same time able, or perhaps more importantly obliged, to make pronouncements concerning him or herself. Confession as being at the heart of the procedures of individualization. So the more one reflects on self, the more questions and answers arises, which is fine. You don't have to have answers all the time about who you. Sometimes it's just all questions, and it's okay to not like answer all the questions about yourself. Just exploring the question is cool. Insofar as we experience subjectivity as autonomous and internal, we presume that self-expression has been repressed by oppressive social systems, and that self-confession is therefore liberatory. Yeah. Just by saying like, I don't really know who the hell I am. I don't know what I'm doing. That's a liberatory because we live in an oppressive society. Part of the oppression is this forcing like, you need to know who you are. And if you don't know, we're going to tell you who you are, right? It's oppressive. But to say like, you're wrong, I'm wrong, we're all wrong, that's liberatory. Why? Because it's true, right? We don't really know. And it's bullshit that so much of our life is about work. Yeah, that's true. Like you have to figure out your career at 10 years old instead of going with the flow with your interests that are not necessarily related to money. Exactly. And that's why I'll always push back. And I know this be a bit annoying, but I beat a dead horse. I push back with kind of some of the socialism that like hyper fixates on like labor, like that Marxist-Leninist stuff, where it's like, it's we gotta focus on getting back the means of our production. The working class needs to the dictatorship of the working class, like the proletariat. We're powerful because we are the laborers. We're the workers. Labor is the ultimate value of everything. It's like the same shit, right? So sometimes that but lots of socialism or lots of people who are into socialists don't think like that. But a lot of people, when I go to these socialist gatherings, it's like, y'all are just talking about this. Y'all are just hyper fixated on work, right? And you've made that into its own class. You're like saying like, yeah, the working class. It's like, I don't want to be identified by my fucking labor. Like, no. Like, how is this like? I don't know. I just think it's like it's not very far from the capitalist tree. And that kind of socialism, like I don't like to be. Like Nadia says, I don't like this hyper fixation on work. I understand, like to accomplish it in life, you need to work. I get it. Like stuff has to get built. You know, if you want to write a book, you actually have to sit down and work to write. I understand all that. You know, I'm not promoting laziness, but it's not, you know, ultimately it's not about the work. It's about like enjoying, discovering new ways of being, exploring the multiplicity of, your ways of life. It's like, which is what this article is talking about, right? That's what it's all about, really. There's also a famous book called The Art of Loving. Some of the Hook's famous books. Yeah, I've heard of that book, The Art of Loving. What I despise is that nowadays people, Nadia, seem to lose hobbies because of work, gets distracted by cell phones. Right. Which is by design, You gotta work because you gotta make capital. So hobbies aren't gonna do it. Well, hobbies can if you, focus. If you're just spending a lot of money on stuff. We do not need to be working so much. We are going over all the planetary boundaries. We need to degrow. Yeah, there's enough food. Yep. Hello. Writing a book can be fulfilling. Working in an Amazon warehouse and during maybe not so much. Yeah, true that. That's why I said earlier that most of North America are unsophisticated in classes because they care too much about work and talk about fuckeries. I mean, isn't that like most? I guess, yeah. You're just saying like, you're just specifically talking about us because that's where we live, and we have this attitude of we like to relax, but no, we don't. So I see, but I would just mention that that's probably it's not just North America, it's South America, it's Africa, it's definitely like China for damn sure. It's Japan, it's all of Europe, right? Even like, some people say, well, some of the democratic socialist, Nordic regions, they they know how to relax. Do they though? Do they? Like, I don't know. It's just everybody is, it's that late stage capitalism. What else? Yes, I agree. Cell phone, information overload. You gotta get yourself a dumb phone. That's like what's in vogue now. Get yourself a dumb phone, like a old ass flip phone from the early 2000s. And then that'll be. There's all these YouTube videos I'm seeing about like Gen Zers. Like, look what I got. This is I'm like, wow, that was like my first cell phone, like the Nokia and shit. It doesn't work. It's a dumb phone. I'm like, that's funny. Just revitalizing the old school phones. What defines late stage capitalism from capitalism? Oh, it's like, there's the, I think we talked about this a little bit last time. Capitalism is in stages. Like late stage capitalism is like now, like everything is capital. Like your privacy or like your data, your information is now like capital. Right? It's like even like your attention. Your attention has now become capital. It's like, I guess it's how much is capital now. Is late stage capital. Like privacy is like a thing that doesn't exist anymore. That because, your information is like education is now capital, right? Whereas like there was a time in capitalism where that wasn't the case. Right? Healthcare and such like that. Whereas, public school when it started was actually like it was not like a means. It was like an actual, like, the system was used to like educate people. But it still is a form of education, but now it's like used to just sell products, right? Education in and of itself has become like a business. I guess late stage capitalism is like all things have been commodified now, as opposed to just some things or like particular things. Personally, I see people of the world being more in tune with themselves and their families and communities. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I don't think. Some parts of yeah, I'm trying to think of an example. I have friends from who I'm just thinking about other countries. I've never been to other countries, but fortunately I have lots of friends who are from other countries. Like I'm thinking about all my Latin American friends who are originally from like Latin America, like Mexico and like El Salvador and Venezuela and Nicaragua, and they just tell me like in Chile, and they're like, man, these countries are fucked up. Like it's all there's poverty, it's a lot of work. I mean, not to denigrate them, like we're dealing with this shit here in the United States, but and then all my Chinese American buddies, they talk about how China is like, damn, all you do in China is work, 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 work. That's all you fucking do is work. I'm actually studying Japanese. That's the language that I study in Japan. So I know people from Japan, and it's the same shit. They're like, fuck, man, Japan is like, you just fucking work all the fucking time. That's all you do in Japan. It's work, 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 work. You never really see your family. So I don't know. It depends on what area you're talking about. Where did I left off here. Far from being natural, gender is learnt often with much difficulty and somewhat unnecessarily. Where was it? Okay. Cool. And I think that's all. The quotes I highlighted. Let's see. What's your ideal society, Neil J? What would it look like? What would you spend your time doing? We would, I wouldn't say, let's see. I wouldn't say I have an ideal society that I want. All I want is people to enlighten themselves and not be ignorant. That's realistic. I would spend time with people who are wise. That's cool. I have an ideal society. Number one, education is free. Education is absolutely free. You pay nothing for education, to the highest extent, right? PhD, that's free. Master's degree, like that's free. 2, healthcare, free, 0. You pay nothing for that. That would be an amazing society, right? No expense paid for healthcare. What's the other one? Oh yeah, like housing, free, 0. You would not pay. Basically, all the shit you need to survive. And I would argue like education, you need that to survive, right? Because you need to be like, because we see how fucked up the world is with uneducated people, right? You have uneducated people. You have authoritarians as the president of the United States. That's what a lack of education does. It's very dangerous. So I would say education is necessary. Of course, healthcare and housing. You're not paying for that at all. Like, nobody needs mansions. I'm not. So you're saying like, well, everybody has a house. Yeah, everybody should have a fucking house. Now, we would need to think that through a little bit more. Like, okay, how's that gonna work? You'd have to like specify all that, but yeah, housing would be free. Of course, like, food would be free, right? You would just have like all these basic necessities you wouldn't pay for it, right? So then it's like, so that's the base. So what would I do? Yeah, I'd be living my dream, right? I'm all, I mentioned before, like, I have, well, first of all, I'd be more invested in philosophy, right? I'd be doing a lot of that. But I also enjoy video games a lot. And I mentioned before, like, I'm actually developing my own video game. So I will spend a lot more time doing that, like making video games. However, that's pretty, that's quite like a capitalist thing, a video game. But you can, like, you can make that in a non-capitalist way, I would argue. For sure. Yeah, I would just, we'd just be doing things we love to do, be more creative and such. And then you said many indigenous communities are more in touch with each other and the land, although colonialism has greatly impacted this and has left their suicide rate much higher than the national average. Said, yeah, a lot of indigenous cultures, they had it right. Yeah, then, like, the Europeans came in and fucked it all up for everybody. I mean, just calling call a spade. But I mean, I'm not, not trying to oversimplify, but a lot of it was that. Highest paid employees, let's see. Highest paid employees and owners can only make 5 times more than their lowest paid. Okay, so you're very specific. Yeah. Yeah, the whole, like, multi-billionaire, like, you should just get rid of that. You might be like, I mean, these people have so much money, they don't even know what to do with their fucking money. Right? They don't even have, they might say, like, well, they need to be compensated. It's like, they have so much money, they don't even know what to do. They just throw it away and shit. So you don't need that much resources. Spread them. Let's see. I guess my idea would be everybody to go to libraries, museums, art galleries, and have artistic and scientific endeavors. Yeah, that's cool. I think it's okay also for just people to be like, fuck it, I'm just going to chill. I think that's fine too. Some people would be like, yeah, but what about the lazy people? Like, let them be lazy. Shit. What about if you just don't want to do nothing in life? You just want to, like, dude, I just want to relax next to a lake, and that's what I want to do my entire life. I think that's fine. Not everybody has to be an artist or a scientist. But of course, like, many people will decide to be an artist or scientist, and that's cool too. Or better, work-owned corporate cooperatives where you have the ability to vote on major decisions if you choose. Democratizing the workplace. Yeah, because that's true. See, you do have to think about those things because, work will get complicated when you're trying to make, like, large-scale shit, like, like if you're trying to, like, build a telescope to see into, like, deep outer space, right? That's going to require a lot of, manpower and resources and different. So then you're going to have to, like, when you're trying to do, like, large scale work projects, it's going to have to go beyond, like, little small work groups. You're going to have to, like, you will have to have massive work groups, like thousands of people working, tens of thousands even working to. So how would that be organized, right? So that's a way to do it. And also 3-day work weeks. Yeah, no, that sounds good to me. I want a society that people aren't egotistical. That's gonna be hard. That's gonna be hard. I think that might be something you can't control. That'd be nice. Some people would say, like, well, it's the systems that promote our ego. And I'm like, I don't know. I think that's just something innate. And we can teach that. We can try and teach that to say, like, you gotta, like, put this ego and you gotta chill out, man. You gotta, like, we can teach that egoism is bad, and you can't let the ego get out of control. But that's gonna be hard because I think that's one of those innate things human beings struggle with. I think that would probably always be a problem as long as a human being exists. I want one where people are more in touch with themselves, each other, and the land. Yeah, that'd be nice instead of detached from. Yeah, I want a society that is spiritually aware and express empathy. Oh, that'd be nice. Empathy is cool. What about all the atheists who completely reject spirituality? Right? I think there should be room for those people too. Where we see ourselves as part of nature, not above it. Yeah, that's cool. Most of us want to add to society, so the few who are lazy their entire life, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because it's funny. I do know people personally like that, who are just like, I just want to chill. Now, I know there's this argument like, well, it's because we live in a society where we have to work in jobs we don't like for long hours, and it just drains our energy, and that's why lots of people are like that. Which is, I think that's true to a certain extent, but I don't know. I also I know people who don't really work that much, really, and they're still like that. So there's that. A society where everybody has land is practically beautiful. Yeah, or like land is shared. You know. Yeah, that's something to think about. I don't know. I'm kind of for like nobody should own land. I think but then I guess the argument would be like, yeah, but I mean you need your space. You can't just have anybody just invade your space. Right? So how's that gonna work? I guess you could allocate. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But I'm not. I'm very anti-owning stuff. But I don't know. Particularly stuff like land. I know that's that's the dream. I need my own land. I don't know. I'm really bothered by that idea of owning a piece of the earth. That's kind of I don't know. It's kind of disturbing, honestly. The earth belongs to everybody, but then how do you deal with well, I don't like that person, I want them away from me, or dude, I need my space. Which I understand that, so I don't know. Right. Oh, okay. People are way ahead of me. Yeah, you're already ahead of me. But also recognize that we can never own land. Right. That concept was. So yeah, you already. That's your opinion, Nadia. That's kind of my opinion too. The land is living. Yeah, it's like you own a person. That's what it sounds like to me, and that we need to treat it with respect. Yeah. It's that's, I don't know. Some people will think that that's absurd. It's dude, a land doesn't have a personhood. And I'm I beg to differ. And of course, a lot of indigenous people believe their land does have personhood, right? And to own it seems it's quite disturbing, honestly. So yeah, how will we figure that out? That's something you'd have to really. That's the type of stuff we should be dedicating our time to, right? How do we respect people's personal space, but not have this concept of land ownage, land ownership, ownage? That's not a thing. Ownership. How does that work? You'd have to think. I'm sure plenty of people have already done that. Probably the book that Nadia got me probably talks about that. Education that is multicultural should teach the depth of different cultures and make children appreciate them. Sure. But also our society doesn't really enable us to participate or engage in activities we want. Maybe that's why your friends aren't motivating. I don't know about that. I participate and engage in activities I want. I do that. I think my society, I mean, sometimes it does enable us to do what we want. Like, I mean, there still is a library. I know it's very underfunded right now. And I know it's that threat. But ever since I've been alive, I've been able to go to the library and enjoy the pursuit of reading, which is what I want. I mean, the internet has, for all its ills and all its like horrifying in social media and like doom scrolling, like it has enabled me to do lots of shit in terms of what I want. I've been able to like, uh, you know, I've been able to play a lot of video games that I would not have been able to play on if the internet didn't exist. Society. Yeah, I don't know. I think we can't ignore like the good. I mean, of course, there's the bad, but the bad doesn't nullify the good, right? Our society does enable us to do lots of stuff. It also like discourages us and like literally blocks us to do a lot of things we want to do. But that's not all it does, right? It doesn't, And then society enables me to talk to y'all who live like thousands of miles away. Right? That's pretty cool. Let's see here. There's the concept of renting land rather than owning. It changes your relation to land. Okay, yeah, I'll have to read up on the renting of land. That still kind of sounds a little disturbing to me, but that might work very well. You are not anti-capitalism, as you mentioned. Why are you against land ownership? Well, I'm not pro-capitalist either. I just think like capitalism is not the ultimate problem. And I think there's this issue of over-obsessing over capitalism. I think capitalism does manifest like a huge amount of our problems, right? Or like capitalism is a manifestation of a lot of our problems, right? I don't think capitalism is the ultimate cause, the root cause, but it does perpetuate a lot of what's going on as negative. So I'm definitely not pro-capitalist, but I'm not like anti-capitalist. I just see like we need to get more fundamental in our because in our understandings of what the problem really is. Because land ownership is a thing in a lot of socialist countries too, like countries that call themselves socialists. Like there was land ownership there too, right? Land ownership is not necessarily like a capitalist thing. Now, like certainly, like capitalism hugely promotes, like operates, functions off of land ownership for sure. So I would like cut that out. And I guess when you cut that out of capitalism, then like, do you even have capitalism anymore? Probably not. But I would say like, yeah, I'm against land ownership, but I'm not necessarily against all versions of capital. Like, I can see how some capital can work, but land as capital is like, that's fucked up in my opinion. But some kinds of capital are okay, but yeah, land is not. Let's see here. But I guess that's you're a motivated person, but for someone else, they might need more supports that don't currently exist under capitalism, such as education being sexist and racist. Yeah, for sure. That's true. So that I didn't pursue STEM because of that personally. Yeah. And I would like to do STEM, but I'm so far behind. One day. So, okay. So you didn't do so, because I remember like, didn't you? Thought I thought you did some good work with your photography. So you decided to do photography but you really wanted to do STEM, but you're like, no, that's a man's world. Photography's for women. Is that what happened? That's a shame. Yeah, no, that definitely a lot of that happens for sure. Humans are territorial, and the prefix simply denotes land. Are humans territorial? Like, are we? I'm not convinced of that. Ownership of land doesn't have to be exploitative. You take care of it. Yeah, you could have shared ownership. I guess now we're kind of getting into what you call it, terminology. I forgot the term. Um, I would, instead of like, I just don't like the concept of ownership. I'm sorry, I just don't. That's a personal thing. I think we should kind of do away with the idea of owning shit because I don't like possession. I got a lot of shit, but that's just because that's a society we live in, and if I could, like, I got that piano right there. If I could just go somewhere and play that piano, that would be great, but I can't. So I got one. uh, yeah, I think instead of like shared ownership, why don't we like stewardship? That was a better word. Like a shared responsibility for helping the land, um, prosper, and a mutual stewardship. I don't know. I think that's better than to just say like, no, this is mine, or even to say like, this is ours. It's like, ugh. I don't even like doing that with the dog that I have. I don't like saying I'm a dog owner. I like saying like, nah, this is my buddy. I think that might make me weird, but I don't like the idea of owning shit. Like particularly like living thing. Like that's my pal. That's what I feel like. My dog is my homie, and we take walks together. I guess you can technically say I'm the dog's guardian. I'm not really. I don't like saying I'm a dog owner, but I don't know. I just don't like the idea of that shit. But I can understand how that could be a little silly. I don't know. Any indigenous nations were nomadic, moving by their seasons and food sources. Yeah, so it might be generationalized to say that humans are territorial. Generalize it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there have been many nomadic people. Not really. I love photography, but I also enjoy STEM, but I was discouraged as a kid only now. Yeah, that sucks. I will say, and I need to like record myself and put it on the Patreon. But I mean, maybe you don't have time. You don't have time, but I enjoy. I enjoy like on the side. Sometimes I just I got these old ass textbooks, and I do mathematics. I just do the math problems. Uh, I gotta go back to like recording myself. I do that from time to time. Put on Patreon. I need to do it more because I study all the time, but I'm just so lazy. I don't turn on the damn camera. But you can still do the step. You can still do the step. But maybe you're like, dude, I'm busy. I'm doing so much shit right now because of capitalism, and I get it. I get it. But I really like mathematics, so I just study a lot of shit on the side just for fun. And you can do that if you have the time. I know some people don't, but somebody asked me, hey, you want to watch Severance? There's a new hot show right now, Severance. And I'm like, I don't got time to watch Severance, man. I'm trying to like work on like learning my integrals, integrating by parts, calculus. I would, but that's just priority shit, you know, you know. But yeah, you could consider like a school. You don't have to necessarily formally learn it in school. You could always do it on the side. Let's see. It's a fact. We humans lived on land for millions of years. Yeah, but just because we lived on it doesn't necessarily mean we were territorial. You can live on a land and not be territorial. It's crazy that we can own things that other people make and many resources went into, but for some reason it's only ours because of money. We should share when we can, and we can borrow when we need it to use it individually. Library socialism. Hello. I made a plug for my Patreon. I got like this piano. I described it on my Patreon. And it was just some guy, like, you know, these pianos, these old ass pianos that are upright, they just sit in people's houses and they're never used, you know, often. Yeah, a lot of times people just use them for old school furniture, and they just sit. So, you know, if you go to like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, there's people who they're actually just giving these away. They're so heavy. They're like, I don't know how to move this, but if you want it, it's free. That's a great. So I actually got this for free. I just paid somebody to move it for like I think I paid them $80 or something, which, you know, well, I think that was fair because they just had a truck and they had a trailer, so they were able to push it. We pushed it on it. So, you know, I think things could be more like that. Like, hey, I'm not using this thing anymore. Do you want it? You know. Instead of like, hey, let me sell this because I need the money. It's like, can I have it? No, but I'll sell it to you because I need the money. It's like, yeah, it's just too bad, but that's the capitalism. Yeah, but going back to like, yeah, I don't really use this anymore. You can have it if you want. You can use it. You know, it'd be nice to go back to. We're so wasteful. We just like, we have so much shit we don't use and we hoard it. Or we just throw out shit that other people could use. It's kind of crazy. We cannot breathe in water reasonably. We function on land. Mm-hmm. That's true. I think you have 48 hours in a day, Neil. No, I just don't binge watch Severance. That's it. That's literally it. But you're saying like, hey, but Nadia's like, I don't do that either. I just spend too much time on Reddit. It's like, well, maybe you should close out the Reddit. I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm amazed at all that you do. You're always showing new hobbies to us. I want to see your daily schedule. Yeah, no. I can show that on a Patreon video or something. Do you ever get stressed feeling you don't have enough time? Well, no, if I don't have enough time, I just don't have enough time. Be like, well, I can't do that. Do you have enough time to socialize? Hell yeah, I socialize all the time. Tomorrow I'm hosting a book club meet up at this house at my home, so I gotta start cleaning it up. Make sure it's all wash the dishes and all that, and we're gonna do some nice socializing. Yeah, no, I socialize a lot. I would love that piano if you don't want it anymore. If you want to pay to ship it to Canada, hey, feel free. That'd be cool. But I'm also using it. It's time to sign off. Yeah, that's probably a piano. It's another thing I do. You know where I found this? I found this guitar on the street. I found this on the street. It's crazy. Like people, I live in a city where people just toss shit on the street. It's like a dump out here. People just toss good shit on the street. uh, I'll play on my guitar a little bit tonight. And I'll be, look, it's lime. I think they didn't like it because the color is lime green, but shit, that's great. It reminds me of old school Nickelodeon. Slime time. I think it was missing a string, but if you could put a string on it. I put that string back on it. It was all good. Yeah, I still play. I haven't played it recently, which is too bad. I should get back on it. Most of my, I bought this on Facebook Marketplace. There's a guy, he was a musician, I don't know why he was selling it, but he was selling it for like, I think it was $100. It came with the case. Yeah, I forgot the song. Yeah, you probably, we're about to leave. We're about to leave. Any plans for the spring, summer? I'm just here at Memphis, Tennessee, doing the Memphis, Tennessee thing. Food not bombs. We're trying to do more activist work here. Now I got the band. See, I'm in the South now. I'm really in the South. I forgot how this. We're in a trade war with you, Neil. I know, right? Yeah, that's the sad part. We don't want nothing to do with these systems, and yet here we are with I think the president did it and then he paused it again. It's hard to keep track of this nutcase president. He's like, all right, I'm gonna enforce the tariffs. Wait a minute, I'm still not doing it yet. I'm gonna give you one more month. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But we already know what the hell's wrong with this guy. But we got all these jackasses here in America like, yo, MAGA, owning the libs. Yeah, we definitely got some. Well, what did Jeremy say? Incompetent and classless or something like that. On the day they are due, but it's making kind of more sustainable. We are buying. Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad it's helping you out. It's fucking us up. It's fucking America up. But at least somebody's benefiting from it. The farmers are suffering. Even the corporations, they're like, this is unstable. We don't know what to do. Oh, unsophisticated. Oh, okay. Is a ukulele? It's probably out of tune. This is my wife's. So my wife's she was gonna get rid. She was like, I think I'm gonna give this to someone. I'm like, no, I'll use it. I don't know how to play the ukulele. This is supposed to be waterproof, apparently. Oh, it has the chords. Picture of the chords. It's all dusty and shit because we has the chords on the side. But it probably needs to be tuned. Yeah, they're easy to learn. Yep, sure are. I should do this on Patreon. Just give a tour of all my instruments. That's my doggy. This is a mandolin. a friend gave me this. All right. Yeah. Yeah, we also got daylight savings time, so guess I'll talk to you later. Yeah, I'm about to head out. Gotta walk this doggy. I found this on the ground too. Alright, I'll see y'all later. Dog is freaking. You're having a fun evening. Oh yeah, I had a good time. Wish we could be there in person. Yeah. Maybe one day. And jam out. If you know how to play an instrument. Alright, I'll see y'all later. Walk my doggy. Peace out. There he is. He's ready to go out. Alright, guys. See you later. Talk to you next week, maybe.